Welcome to SpaceDoc. I'm your Space Doc, Dr. James, here to share my passion for space, spaceships, and the Star Trek universe. Today we're looking at the latest issue from the official Star Trek Starships collection by Fanhome, which is the USS Archimedes, Captain Sonya Gomez's ship from the Season 2 finale of Star Trek Lower Decks. So I was really excited for this ship to be added to the Fanhome list for two big reasons. One is I love Star Trek Lower Decks. I think it's some of the best Star Trek we've had in years. It's really funny. It's got some very classic Star Trek elements. It's very referential of the past, but also brings us forward into a new future with Star Trek. And I was very sad when this was canceled. I would love if we had a live action spin-off or sixth season with the cast from Star Trek Lower Decks. But not only do I love Star Trek Lower Decks, but I actually really like this design. This is obviously sort of a kit bash between the Excelsior and Sovereign class ships. It worked really well, in my opinion, for Lower Decks in this sort of stylized, cartoonish format. And I'm really excited to see it rendered here in a physical model. It's also really interesting that we sort of have two Excelsior class or Excelsior refit or spin-off classes in the same sort of time frame. We have this, the Obina class, but we also have sort of a Neo Excelsior from Star Trek Picard, USS Excelsior NCC 42037. This featured in some of season 2 in that sort of fleet against the Borg, and then surprise, in season 3 in the fleet against the Borg. And to be honest with you, between these two styles of ships, I actually like the Obina class a bit more. And I know that might be controversial. In particular, my good friend, Dr. Mike Wong, who is the lead for the Strange New Worlds, A Science in Star Trek podcast, which if you have not listened to it, please go do it. Go listen to that show. It's great. I know he is not a fan of the Obina class. So, to each person, we all have our own preferences. But I'm excited to open up the Archimedes today. We'll put the Excelsior aside. Come back to her soon. But yeah, let's have a look at the USS Archimedes. So first things first, the box. Again, the sort of standard Fanhome box, a lovely oblique view on the front, a top-down view on the side. You can already see some of the unique shaping of this ship. The normal purple Fanhome end caps. And then I always love this sort of side profile view of the ships on this side of the box. So why don't we open her up? Now for fun, I actually pulled out a special tool to open this up, and that's my dock tag, which I got from Factory Entertainment at San Diego Comic-Con. I might do a review of some of the products that they make because they're pretty cool. But let's actually use this Klingon dagger to open up the Obina class USS Archimedes. So first things first, we've got the magazine. I'll actually put this to the side. We'll come back to this in a little bit. Let's open her up. I am very eager to take this out of the box. First glances look promising. We'll put the stand to the side. Archimedes. And here she is, the USS Archimedes. Oh, I am very excited to look at this ship. It's always interesting doing these reviews on camera because you're seeing my reaction in real time, and it sometimes takes me a minute to actually parse my thoughts. Why don't we have a overview of the ship? We'll start at the front and the bow and work our way downwards and aft. First things first, actually, the saucer is where all the metal is, it feels like. Mostly the top of the saucer. Yep. Everything else is plastic. So she feels very front heavy. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not one of those people that expects everything to be die cast. I want it to look good. And whether that's metal or plastic, I don't care. So actually the first thing that jumps right off to me is actually the paint. So you can see this ship is really Aztec. There's a lot of shades of gray. So even here in this light gray patch or in the dark gray patch, there's multiple shades of gray in sort of quasi-rectangular patterns. This Aztec pattern is really nice. It looks like there's a few shades of gray in each zone, and that really makes the ship pop a lot. The bridge here is pretty simple. It's sort of a conical shape. There's no obvious front view screen or anything like that, which is totally fine. That's consistent with ships of this era. There's a back sort of rectangular section to the bridge, which has a little red stripe there. Maybe that's an impulse engine of some sort, or I mean, it kind of feels like it should be just based on the color. There's also escape pods. This sort of, I don't know, tetrahedron or hexagonal shape in a way, triangular shape. These are molded in, so you can see that they're raised above the surface and sort of painted an off yellow color. Very Sovereign class in their design. Those look great. There's a little speck of white on top of the bridge dome. And actually, there's some very fine sort of graphite colored lines, like graphite gray colored lines right next to the bridge dome and all over the ship. You can actually see the sort of gridded lines here. Those are not molded in, they're painted on, but they look great. They look great. Very fine scale texture. Moving forward, so we have this phaser strip running around the front. There's no warning labels on the ends of it. Some more escape pods along the edge of that. I like this sort of alternating pattern from the light gray tone to the dark gray tone back to light before you hit the rim of the saucer. And actually one thing I really like is the registry. So you can see the registry there, NCC 83002, very clearly written. The registry itself is in black, but has this very noticeable yellow outline, and that really helps differentiate it from the hull. The ship's name, USS Archimedes, is also there, nicely written. It doesn't like perfectly conform to the ellipticity of the saucer, but I mean that might be show accurate. So you can see like the curve, it's less curved than the saucer itself, but it's still very readable, and that's probably why they did it. It might look a little weird if it's curved and matches that extreme curve shape. And actually going around the saucer, you can kind of see here in sort of a gold mustardy color, there are actually pinstripes that lead up to the registry on either side and go around the entire saucer. They can kind of get lost in the Aztecing, but I think, especially when I move the ship with respect to the light, you can really see them. That's a nice detail. At the front, we have this red navigational light, more escape pods, and some blocks of gold that are presumably reaction control system or RCS thrusters. You can see they are arranged in sort of quadrants on the edge of the saucer. They look good. There's no detail on them, but I think that looks excellent. On the port and starboard edge of the saucer, there's sort of this gray block, which even that is textured, which looks great, with the navigational light on the top, green on starboard. red on port, which looks good. For me, one of the highlights of a well-modeled ship is when they get the windows on the rim of the saucer. Not every Eaglemoss or Fanhome model manages to do this. Whether it's by quirks of the manufacturing process, sometimes this gets skipped over. And actually, one place where it gets very noticeably skipped over is the USS Cerritos itself. That model has no windows on the rim of the saucer in the Fanhome, or sorry, the Eaglemoss version. When in reality, that ship has a lot of windows on the rim of the saucer. In fact, it's where most of the windows are, and so I'm very pleased that there are windows here. The windows here are painted, they're not molded, in sort of a light blue, bluish white color, and I think they look great. They go around the entire saucer. There's no windows that I can see up in sort of the bridge dome area and those top view decks, but maybe that's just show accurate. Yeah, just looking at it right now, I really love the amount of paint detail on this ship. All that Aztecing really helps sell the scale of the ship. There are molded sort of stair-stepped levels to the saucer. You can kind of see them in the light, just to help add texture. So why don't we keep going to the back of the saucer now? So behind the bridge, there's this sort of plateau section, very Excelsior, or I mean, even Strange New Worlds Enterprise style. It ultimately flows back to the impulse deck on the back, but on top you can see more Aztecing, a little bit of a dark olive colored section. I mean, if it weren't for the red stripe there, which I kind of assume is an impulse engine, I could almost imagine that being a shuttle bay and a shuttle bay landing pad, but who knows? Maybe the magazine will tell us more. There is another row of escape pods. Worth noting with the escape pods, they are molded in, and I mean, I'm very glad they're here. I'm glad that they're molded and not just painted. They are kind of like rounded little dimples on top, so they're not like crisp, flat, uplifted escape pods. So, but I think they look good. There's more of this sort of gray panel lines that fill in this. It's asymmetric. So you can see it's almost kind of like part of the Aztecing. It adds a little bit of texture. It's on the edges here. One thing I noticed looking at these sort of pencil lines is that they are not always complete. And you can see that further up along the saucer, like up here, that panel line has a gap in it. It doesn't continue across. This one has several gaps. These ones at the front are more or less complete. So it's not like a consistent through-going panel line. I don't necessarily mind that. I mean, well, yeah, I don't think I mind it. I'm being a little ambivalent or uncertain. It does kind of look like it's an incomplete print job, but it's so fine scale that it doesn't bug me that much. And I guess all the other pros of this ship, all the other paint details and molded details are enough that I don't care that much about any gaps in the lines. Now let's move to the impulse engines. So very Excelsior-like. These are red and painted in, not molded plastic, which I think is totally fine. When the engines are sort of very small and don't have that much opening to the outside, if it's molded in plastic, it tends to get very dark. So I appreciate that these are just painted in red, very bright, makes them pop. There's not too much going on back there, so I think it looks good. Why don't we flip it over and look at the underside of the saucer? So the underside looks great. There's a lovely registry up here, again with black lettering and yellow outlining that really makes that registry pop. There's no name of the ship printed down here, and actually there's no windows really on the bottom side of the saucer. Contrast that to the top. Actually, there's no windows on the top of the saucer either. They're really only on the rim of the saucer, which is pretty consistent with the original Excelsior class. Going back underneath, there's this lovely, gigantic Starfleet emblem on the bottom of the saucer. It's very noticeable in the show. It's kind of atypical. We don't usually see big, giant emblems on Starfleet vessels like this. And you know, I don't mind it. It's kind of goofy, kind of cartoony, and this wasn't a cartoon. But for a ship that was going to be doing sort of first contact, second contact duties, sort of carrying the flag of Starfleet, you know, it kind of could make sense in universe. There are presumably RCS quads in gold block details at different parts of the saucer. The gray block that's sort of on the edge of the saucer continues over the lip and onto the bottom, where there is also navigational lights, red and green. Another phaser strip, no end markings, more gold and gray pinstriping. And just like the pinstriping on the top of the saucer, it's not always complete. So you can see, for example, gaps in the striping. And it's not obvious to me that that's intentional, or meaning part of the original design, or just some sort of painting mishap for the model, but it doesn't bug me that much. The bottom sensor dome, it looks good. It's pretty simple. But again, I think the real highlight here is not really the details of the mold, because there aren't that much, but the painted details. There's a lot of really nice Aztecing on this model. Some of the best Aztecing, I think, in the Fanhome models we've gotten thus far. Let's move down to the neck. So the neck continues the gray, dark gray Aztecing. There's no like ridged detail like the original Excelsior class, but the dark color is very reminiscent of that dark neck on the Excelsior. There are a few banks of painted on windows, only a few rows, which is interesting because this neck is probably many decks tall. So it's not quite like the Enterprise D, which is full of windows, but I really like the swoopy nature of the neck. So it very clearly harkens back to the Excelsior, but it has a much more forward-leaning curvature to it, which I like. I think that's a nice sort of futuristic upgrade of the Excelsior. The secondary hull, again, very Excelsior-like, at least in sort of profile, and very Enterprise B-like with these sort of boat hull sort of ridges running along the sides of the secondary hull. These ridges are in darker gray with Aztecing and a couple banks of windows on them. There is a gold delta there, some red pinstriping, which I think looks good. There is sort of two ridges here of dark gray that is raised above the surrounding, and those ridges themselves have lights on them and are end capped in red. They make me think again of the original Excelsior, which sort of had a ridge there at the top of the secondary hull. Let's go to the deflector. So here, the deflector is sort of in this cutout. There's an interesting little pod that raises up from the front of the deflector housing, I guess I'll say, which has painted and molded details. Not quite sure what that is. I mean, this deflector housing looks a bit more like the Sovereign class, actually. So maybe there's some analogies here to like a torpedo launcher or captain's yacht or something. The deflector itself is painted. It's not transparent plastic. It's a painted sort of pale yellow color with lots of molded in texture, which looks great. I don't mind that it's painted. When it's painted like this, it gets to be very bright and it really does pop. The yellow color, I believe, is accurate. And the yellow in deflectors, I mean, we tend to think of deflectors as being red or blue, but I often think about the first contact deflector, partly because we saw characters walking around on it, but there it was sort of a yellow or gold color, and I like that reference. The bottom of the secondary hull has a lot of molded in texture. Not a lot of windows. There are a few lights. There's some red nap lights there. Lots of ridges and different shades of gray. The back of the secondary hull has almost looks like a big giant window with sort of a mustard yellow tone there. It's not quite like the Excelsior, which has sort of a secondary shuttle bay or cargo bay down there. I mean, maybe this is and the doors are just closed, but I like that pattern and this change to the design. As we go along the back of the secondary hull, the gray top of the hull continues with some windows on it. And we can go to the top of the secondary hull. In the very back, you have sort of a rounded pattern. It's not obvious that this is a shuttle bay. There's no like central divider or any other texture that makes it obvious that that's a shuttle bay. But there's some nice red pinstriping here that picks up again on top of this pod that connects to the nacelles, and back here as we reach the back of the neck, which is nice. Again, lots of great Aztecing on this ship. It continues along the top. The molded detail, like the molded design of the ship, is pretty simple. Not a lot of intricacy, which I think is consistent with the lower deck styling. As we go up to the back of the neck, this section is noticeably absent of Aztecing, but I don't know if that's accurate, but so much of this ship is covered by Aztecing. It feels like I have to note when there's a section that is not. So why don't we jump up to the nacelles? So they're connected to this sort of raised hump akin to the Excelsior class, but at this point things start to look a little bit more sovereign-like. So the pylons themselves, again, this whole back section is plastic, but you have these nacelles with painted details on them, raising up to these sovereign style nacelles, which I think look great actually. They're a little bit more sleek and narrow than the sovereign nacelles on their own, but I think they look good. They're very clearly related. The front sort of Bussard collectors here are red transparent plastic. There's a little bit of an air bubble there in the center, actually, of both, which is totally fine. It almost makes it look like there's interior structure there. The backs of the cells, or rather the tops of the nacelles, are this transparent blue, and they have a gridded texture on them, which is nice. That's molded in blue plastic. Lots of gray details on the side. And eventually we get to the rear. And unlike the Sovereign class, there's a little bit of painted blue back here on the backs of the nacelles. It's painted, it's not part of the same transparent plastic, but the color match is pretty nice. Again, Aztecing basically everywhere. I like this ship. I mean, the proportions are wonky. There's no question about that. If you're used to the Excelsior or the Sovereign, this feels wrong in a way. Like the proportions of the saucer to the secondary hull to the nacelles they're not quite, I don't know, they're not quite what you'd expect, but It does feel totally appropriate for lower decks, and you know, I like it. I like this sort of kitbashy feel between the Excelsior and Sovereign. It fills a niche that it's kind of absent. It's actually kind of surprising to me how infrequently the Sovereign type nacelles are used in other ships. Beyond the Sovereign class, like the Enterprise E, the only other ship I can think of that has this style nacelles or something similar to it is the Voyager A from Prodigy. And they're pretty evolved from this. They have a little bit more greebly texture to them. So it's nice to see something that sort of borrows that Sovereign heritage. And this definitely does feel like what a sort of kit-bashed Excelsior would look like in this time period of lower decks. Now we have a quick look. Even though the back half of the ship is all plastic, the alignment of the nacelles and the pylons looks pretty straight on. Yeah, everything looks pretty good. Everything looks nice and parallel. Yeah, no real complaints. I like this ship. It's funky. It's not a hero ship, but it's... You could imagine this in the fleet. Makes sense for doing no individual missions. I like it. I might be in the minority in that, but I like this ship. So why don't we see how she fits on the stand? So it's the usual Eagle Moss and now Fanhome model stand. Black circular or elliptical base. Weighted, no sticker on the bottom. Comes with a transparent clear stand, which pops right in. Love when that happens. Doesn't always, but worked this time. I'll see how she fits on the stand. So I assume it clips onto the saucer, and actually, ooh, I like that. It actually clips in here pretty tightly, which is good because this ship is pretty front heavy, and so I was a little worried that she would just be falling out of the stand, but you can see I'm just holding it. Look, I can hold it almost, I can hold it vertical, and this stand is keeping her in place, and I like that. I'm gonna borrow my Klingon dagger box as a stand. You can see she has a nice sort of upward rake. Very stable. I can pick her up by the ship, move the whole thing. Most Fanhome and Eagle Moss models are not like that. Most will pop right out of the stand, and a few will even just tip forward. So I think stand is an A+ here. So why don't we pull out another ship and compare her in terms of size and detail? So if you've watched any of my reviews before, in particular for the Hallmark ships, you'll know I love the Enterprise B. I have such a particular affinity for this ship from Star Trek Generations. This particular permutation of the Excelsior class somehow really speaks to me. And given the similarities, both in terms of the Excelsior class to the Archimedes, but also this specific version with this sort of additional boat hole shape, I thought it would be perfectly appropriate to pull out my XL Enterprise B from the Eagle Moss days and compare her to the Archimedes. So first, I was just raving about the Archimedes stand. The Enterprise B stand is fine, but you can see it's very loose, so that's the sort of typical stand situation. Right off the bat, you can see that the Enterprise B is a lot larger and taller than the Archimedes. Although standing next to each other on a stand, they don't look half bad next to each other. So next to each other, the Enterprise B is notably longer, probably by a couple of inches. Let's see them just next to each other. These are very likely not to scale, but I'm not surprised the Enterprise B is larger. This was an Excel class model from Eagle Moss back in the day, so it's quite large, whereas this is the Archimedes is a standard Fanhome model, so it's more akin to sort of the medium-sized models from the Eagle Moss days. And I actually like this size scale. It's easier to make room for them in your bookshelf than the XLs. The XLs can get quite large. But yeah, I like both these models. You can see actually the Archimedes has a lot more Aztecing on the ship compared to the Enterprise B. So let me get them in focus. So you can see Enterprise B does have Aztecing, but there's like only two tones, a very white sort of eggshell color and then a little bit of speckly gray. Whereas the Archimedes has like, I don't know, 3 or 4 shades of gray all overlapping. It's quite detailed, which I like. One point of comparison here is actually also the rim of the saucer. This was something I brought up with the Archimedes, that I really appreciated the windows and the detail on the edge of the saucer. There are molded windows here on the XL Enterprise B, but no painted detail. There should actually be sensor lines going around the edge of the saucer, and there are none here. So I think the edge of the saucer rim details are better on the Archimedes. I think maybe one other difference to note is you can see here on the Enterprise B, it actually has a transparent or translucent blue deflector dish, so it has a different material down there. But honestly, the bright yellow on the Archimedes does really pop. So if they had made that a transparent yellow, it would be so much darker just because of its location on the ship. So I like that they actually painted that. Yeah, these look great. Very clearly related ships. Different eras. But yeah, I love them both. So the last thing to do is have a look at the magazine for the USS Archimedes, NCC 83002. Lovely render on the front. As a reminder, we are now on issue number 15 of the Fanhome collection. It feels like this collection just started, but oh my bookshelves are already getting full. So let's have a look inside. Some instructions on how to mount it on the stand. I really like that front profile, very Excelsior-like, very intimidating actually. You can see active 2381, Captain Sonya Gomez, introduced in Star Trek The Next Generation. Weapons, phasers, photon torpedoes, defenses, deflectors, magnetic hull plating, and she was on a diplomatic contact mission. So I'm not going to go through every page and read all the text, but here's a lovely render of the ship. One thing worth noting is there actually are windows or lights here on the render that I don't think are really on the ship. So yeah, there's no white windows or lights up there on the bridge dome. But they're very clearly here in the render. So I wonder what that's about. As per usual, some lovely orthographic views that I get very annoyed at because they have no annotations on them. These are great graphics. I just want to see what everything is. It's interesting that this sort of back section of the secondary hull is lit up in a yellow color. It does make it feel like it might be some sort of engine, or I have no idea what it is, but it's fascinating that it's so bright here. It's pretty muted on the actual model. On the back of the saucer here, you can actually see, yeah, that bit behind the bridge dome does look like a third impulse engine. So I assume that is what that is. Actually, it's interesting that there's a bit of red here that I don't think is the impulse engine Like this red section here presumably corresponds to these sort of gray bits back here, which are not impulse engines. So I don't know what that's about. There are some sensor lines or black lines running around the edge of the saucer. Here, I'll get this nice and close. That are not well replicated on the saucer of the model. The lights are, but those black lines are not. So that's a little bit of a miss, but that's pretty typical for the Fanhome and EcoMoss models. I mean, the scale we're talking about at the edge of the saucer is so tiny that I'm not terribly surprised that they missed it. It's also an awkward place to put printed texture, but so it goes. So here's another graphic, this one from the show, showing the ship, which I think is very interesting. There are some notes here about how they designed it. And I always love concept art. So here you can see the evolution of some of the design. That's interesting. It looks like they went from, very clearly they wanted something Excelsior, or rather Enterprise B or even Lakota-like, but we're experimenting with putting either the Enterprise D style nacelles or the Sovereign Enterprise E nacelles onto the ship. Experimented with different nacelle connection points. Very interesting. Again, more plan views of the ship. This one is interesting. There's this, I commented about the bright yellow rear of the secondary hull. Here there's actually a glow associated with it, which makes me wonder if it is actually some sort of engine. But I'll have to read to see if they talk about it. This is fun. There's some LCARS graphics from the show here in the magazine. And then some renders of Captain Sonya Gomez as shown in Star Trek Lower Decks. And then finally, last graphic showing the ship as it's sort of being scorched during atmospheric entry. So something that happens in the climax of that episode. It's a great episode. I actually really love this episode. Maybe that's contributing to the fact that I like this ship. That's it. That's the end of the magazine. So that is the USS Archimedes from Fanhome. I like the ship. I think I say that almost every episode, but I always appreciate that we keep getting these new ships, new models from Star Trek, from the most recent shows, letting us see and touch things that appear in a show that I love and make it feel much more tactile, much more real. And yeah, it's a goofy ship. It's got goofy proportions, but I like her. I'm very glad that they chose to add it to the collection. I do hope Fanhome continues to add in more lower decks ships. There are a lot that have not yet been made. And yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of all the different little permutations. In the last season, we had all these mirror universe variants. We had the Anaximander, which would be interesting to see made, a Defiant class ship. The Beagle, which played a key role in the finale episodes of that show. Starbases, oh gosh, so much. I would even love like from this very same episode, they take the hull plating off the Cerritos, so you see this sort of orangish color, lots of textures and greebles. I would like a model of that. Yeah. Oh, and of course the vertical warbird. So many great ships from that show. Lovely show. If you've not watched it, go watch it. Stop watching this. Go watch Lower Decks. But yeah, glad to have this in the collection. I think this model is excellent. I look forward to comparing this later to the Picard sort of revamp of the Excelsior, because I think these will be pretty similar and pretty comparable. At least ships people will want to compare. Well, with that, I think we can wrap up this review. Let me know what you thought. Please like and subscribe if you're interested for more ship content from me. Let me know what you think about this episode in the comments. If there's stuff you liked, didn't like, let me know. And with that, we can conclude this episode. I hope everyone stays safe out there and live long and prosper. And of course, I have to show the ship as it appeared in most of its episode.